Hello, can I welcome members and officers and the public watching on the webcast to today's meeting at the GLA Oversight Committee. My name is Len Duval and I chair this meeting. I'm an Assembly member for Greenwich and Lewisham. In accordance with the government regulations, we are holding this meeting on a virtual basis and Assembly members are participating remotely. I am in City Hall, being supported by a small team. Please can I remind participants to turn your phones off and put them onto silence and to keep microphones muted when you're not speaking. Can I ask the clerk to confirm the names of Assembly members who are virtually present at this meeting and any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We received apologies for absence from Assembly Member Whittle, and present on the call we have yourself, Chair, Assembly Member Duval, Assembly Member Hall, Deputy Chairman, Assembly Member Berry, Assembly Member Boff, Assembly Member Desai, Assembly Member McCartney, Assembly Member Pigeon, Assembly Member Prince, Assembly Member Dr. Sahota, and Assembly Member Shah.
Okay, so I'm now going to move to item 2, declarations of interest. Can we note the list of officers held by Assembly members? And can I ask members if there's any disclosable pecuniary interest in specific items listed on the agenda? Okay, so it's agreed that it's noted and there are no disclosable pecuniary interests. I'm moving on to item 3, which is the minutes. Can I ask the committee to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 2nd of February 2021? Can I also ask the committee to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the EU Exit Working Group held on the 26th of January 2021 to be signed by the Chair as a correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'm moving on to item 4, summary list of actions. Can we note the completed and closed and outstanding actions arising from previous meetings of the GLA Oversight Committee and the additional correspondence sent and received? I've been given notice that Assembly Member Keith Prince wishes to raise an item to the head of paid service. So can we just note the first part first and then I'll bring in Assembly Member Prince.
Noted.
Thank you very much.
Noted.
Assembly Member Prince.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking to Mary. I can't see her in person.
No, I'm here. Assembly Member Prince.
Marvellous. Mary, I'm very disappointed. Actually, I've got the building in the background here, the Crystal building. I have sent you an email. You haven't responded to it. When we met at the building with the two Ians, I remember that specifically because I can't remember a name and it was very convenient that they both had the same name. At that meeting, we discussed motorcycle parking. You gave me an assurance there would be parking for motorcycles, but now it's being reported back to me that there won't be any parking for motorcycles. I can't imagine that you deliberately lied to me, but it looks that way.
I'll respond?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I'll be very grateful if you
No, I was just checking that you'd finished. So I absolutely did not lie to you. I assumed we would have parking for motorcycles. As you say, it now looks as if we will not. What I am waiting for is absolute clarity as to why that is before I respond to you, Assembly Member Prince. So what I don't want to do is get it wrong again. So I generally thought there would be. There are issues of planning policy on which I am not an expert, which mean that it appears to be that we will not have them. But having inadvertently misled you first time through my own ignorance of the matter, I want to make sure that when I respond to you, it's an accurate response. It's imminent. But I just don't want to send you something that isn't clear.
The only thing I would say, Mary, is that it would have been nice to have what I would call a holding email just to explain that you will get back to me and that you're checking out the planning da-di-da-di-da. So just a holding response would have been nice to have had that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not. I'm a motorcyclist. Actually, I may well go there by other means because it's not difficult for me. But there are a good half a dozen employees that we have who use motorcycles, they may not have the same options and flexibility that I have. So it is on their behalf that I'm actually asking, and I don't see why, even under planning law, so I look forward to seeing that, we couldn't have some kind of just covered, not enclosed, but just some covered area, the same as a push bike rack. Because you can't, you could make, wherever you put a push bike rack, you could allow motorcycles to go in that. So I really think there's a bit of a, not from you, Mary, I'll accept it's not from you, but there seems to be a bit of the old proverbial red-coloured herring popping up here.
Can I just ask you to respond to that, Mary, and then I think we will move on?
Yeah, I agree with that, Chair. Thank you.
So well, again, I apologise. It was inadvertent on my part.
I accept that, Mary.
There are reasons I am assured, but as you say, let's also have another look and see what if anything is possible, what is possible.
Thank you. Well, I'm grateful to you, Mary, and I'm grateful to you, Chair, too. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 5. And so action taken under delegated authority. The committee is asked to note the recent actions taken by the Chair of the London Assembly under a delegated authority in consultation with the Deputy Chairman of the London Assembly, party group leaders, Caroline Pidgeon MBE AM, to agree the London Assembly's joint letter with the Mayor of London, London's Legacy Development Corporation, Old Oak and Park Royal Development Corporations, to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, as attached in Appendix 1 of the report. This is where I take a breath. And then I move on to part B. Can I also ask you to note the recent action taken by me as Chair under delegated authority in consultation with the members of the EU Working Group to agree the Working Group's letter to the Mayor on EU citizens living in London, as attached in Appendix 2 of this report. Can I ask
Noted.
Thank you very
Noted.
much. I'm moving on to item 6, which is the Mayor's response to the EU Working Group output. The committee is asked to note the response from the Mayor to the EU Working Group's output from March 2020, as attached in Appendix 1 to the report.
Noted.
I'm now moving on to item 7, Secretariat's Quarterly Monitoring Report, Quarter 3, Stroke 4, 2020/21. Do you wish to receive a report, a verbal report? Are there any questions on the report? Okay, we are being asked to note the Core Secretary Quarterly Review for the 3rd and 4th quarters of 2021, November to January 2021 and February to April 21. Can we note?
Yeah.
Noted.
Okay, moving on, allocations of the Assembly Budget 2021/22. I'm going to ask Ed Williams, Assistant Director of Scrutiny Investigation, to do a brief introduction of the report and allow to take members' observations or questions. Ed Williams, are you? Yes, you're on the call. Thank you.
I am there. Yes, thanks, Chair. A slightly different job title, but I'll roll with it just to say, so at the end of the budget process, the Assembly was allocated £8 million, and I know there are some issues to do with the changing numbers, but we're not necessarily here to discuss that today. What has been agreed for the Assembly is an £8 million budget for the year ahead, and this that is a reduction from the current year, so the reduced amount has been allocated proportionately across each unit of the Secretariat budget, and that's what's before members today.
Okay, so
I have to take questions, Chair.
yeah, Assembly Member Hall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a question for Mary, really. Mary, I was wondering, are you sorry for the pain caused to staff members while the London Assembly Directorate, we were having to make sufficient cuts in our budget in order to go into many were facing redundancy, etc. Are you sorry for that? You're on mute, Mary.
Thank you. So, of course, I'm sorry that staff were put through the consultation that was then cancelled.
Okay, do you think it could have been handled better?
I would like to think it could have been handled better. I don't think we know all the facts around it yet.
No, I don't think we do. I'll leave it at that at this point, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other members who wish to come in at this stage? Now, that very issue that Assembly Member Hall has raised will be further followed up at our Budget and Performance Committee for those who are watching on the webcast, and you will find the date of that on the GLA website, and you might wish to follow that further up in terms of the conversation around whether we could have handled it slightly differently in terms of the information that may have been available. So, can we look at the technical parts of this report? So, we're being asked to agree the proposed allocation to the Assembly and Secretariat budget for 2021/22 as set out in the report. We're being asked to approve the general use of the Assembly's budget as allocated in the relevant teams within the Secretariat by the committee in the 2021/22 year, as set out in paragraph 5.4 of the report, and to note that the report on the allocation of the Assembly and Secretariat budget for 21/22 year will also be presented to the first meeting of this committee or its successor body following the GLA elections in May 2021 in order either to confirm the allocations or to deal with any consequential changes to the allocations that are necessary at that time. Can you agree with what I've just said? Thank you. I've seen nods. Thank you very much. I'm now moving on to item 9, changes to the GLA establishment. Charmaine de Souza, Assistant Director of HR and Organisation Development, is with us. I think she's going to present this report, and I think it does need presenting. Charmaine, I can see you. Yep, fine. Do you wish to proceed?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So the timing of this paper to Oversight Committee today is driven by our need, as you will see from the detail, to provide certainty to a number of our staff who are currently employed on fixed-term contracts, which are shortly due to expire at the end of this month, in fact, and whose posts have been fully funded as part of the 2021-22 budget. The extensions relate to 33.6 FTE over 11 units, as set out in the paper. And alongside this, we're proposing to convert 3 FTE from fixed term to permanent, reflecting the ongoing nature of the work that those posts undertake. Just over half of the posts set out, 18.4 FTE, are externally funded, and this is set out in detail on a post-by-post basis. The full context, of course, of the posts, including the wider staffing implications, will be set out in the detail of the 21-22 budget. I think I'll pause there, Chair.
Okay, I've got Assembly Member Caroline Pidgeon, followed by Assembly Member Susan Hall.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask, there's a considerable number of HR posts being extended. Do we really need all of these posts, even when there's a review going on at the moment? We're looking at a shared service, and given we have got budgetary constraints, yes, we've got a better financial settlement this year than we had feared, but we have got financial constraints. So do we really need all of those HR posts?
Yeah, so one of those posts, of course, is externally funded, which is the service we provide to MOPAC. The other 3.4 posts I can take in turn. So one is a job share related to HR policy developments, and members will recall that we started a root and branch review of our policies about 18 months ago for HR policies. The vast majority had not been touched for at least a decade before I joined, and whilst maybe legally compliant, were really needing an update to become much more progressive. You'll know that we've just launched, for example, the organisational change policy, putting us in good stead for any change that comes into play. But other key policies we had to address quickly for diversity and equality reasons, for example, our acting up allowances and recognition payments policy. We dealt with the carers and dependency leave policy, in fact, just before COVID struck, again, holding us in good stead, and a bereavements policy, and of course worked with members on the Assembly, particularly the chair of this committee, on the reservists policy back in 2022. So we are making good progress, but clearly that 1.2 FTE will continue that important work. The other posts there relate particularly to our systems. Again, we have a reasonably good system. You're right. We are looking at and running a programme of work to understand how we can explore shared services with TfL. We need our systems in really good shape to make that transition if that decision is made. And we are running a much more regular and robust system of compliance in terms of our establishment monthly with CMT, chaired by the Chief Officer, and then of course reporting quarterly through the CHPIs, and then 6 monthly through our workforce reports. So our systems, that systems role is shoring all of that work up. And the last project officer role will be key to the transition we will undertake should the decision be made on HR shared services.
I'm sorry, Caroline. Pigeon, do you wish to follow up? No. Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. Mary, if I can ask you, do you think it's right to employ a highly paid Executive Director of Strategy and Communications permanently when so many Londoners are struggling?
I do think it's right, otherwise I wouldn't be proposing it.
Well, I hear what you say. I mean, apart from the GLA promoting itself, what benefit to Londoners does this post deliver?
Well, this post is about the leadership of a whole range of key functions to the GLA. So not only our sort of strategy intelligence team, but our external relations team, our city operations team, our freedom of information team, a whole set of teams which, when I first arrived, were sort of scattered across the organisation and weren't in any shape or form in some type of effective corporate centre. So that's why I created the job. The reality is that in the last year, this job has given us the capacity not only for some of the things that I had originally envisaged, but also has played a significant role in the coordination of the GLA's response to COVID and the development of our recovery programme. And I think I said it in the paper, but I absolutely believe that without this post in place, we would not have been able to respond as effectively as we have done, and certainly not in the coordinated way, working with our partners in local government. That role, that responsibility is with us for many months yet, as well as the original purpose for creating the post.
Okay, I hear what you say on that one. Given that London Power has yet to break even, do you think it's financially prudent to continue with the projects officer and senior marketing officer posts?
Yes, I mean, I think what I'd like to say, Assembly Member, and to the Chair as well, what you see in this paper are the posts that we wish to continue beyond the end of this month. What you don't see in this paper are the posts that we are planning not to continue. You will get a much better sense of that in the budget published tomorrow, and which we will discuss in detail at Budget and Performance Committee. So this is only one side of the picture that you are seeing, and each of these has had to earn its place on this list of the ones that we would like to continue. And to your point about the two London Power posts, they have done that. They've earned their part on this list. I mean, with the exception of the 3 that we want to convert to permanent, the other 33.6 are continued fixed term posts. Some of them not for very long, some of them for a bit longer. So I think it's important not to lose sight of that. Only 3 of these are we asking to convert to permanent, or am I intending to convert to permanent? All the others are remaining fixed term, albeit extended from their original period of time.
Well, you're quite right. We only ever see one side of things. We only ever see what we're shown, really, don't we? Well, once we see everything else tomorrow, then, as the chairman quite rightly said, we can pick some of these issues up. All I do know is there just constantly seems to be more people employed. But we'll bring this up, Chairman, after we've seen the budget again tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Can we make sure that this report is also circulated to all budget and performance members? I know there's an overlap of some members of that committee, but to make sure that others see this report in conjunction with the other information that will be published tomorrow. Can someone pick that up from the Secretariat for me? Okay, let's look at what we're being asked to do. So the committee is asked to respond. Sorry, is there anybody else who wishes to contribute to this conversation? Okay, let's look then at what we're being asked to do. So we're being asked to respond to the Chief Officer's consultation on proposed changes to the GLA establishment. I think you've heard some members' contributions already. I don't see any further ones. I think then we will move on to item 10. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's move on to the expansion of, this is quite a very important issue to a number of people across London. In fact, many thousands, I suspect. Expansion of GLA building safety team to deliver a new Waking Watch relief fund. So, Charmaine D'Souza is down to introduce. Do you just briefly want to do that for this item?
Chair, not me. I just did the last item. I think it might be potentially Deborah Levinson, I think, maybe. I'm just looking for the right officer.
I'm just...
No, it isn't me. I think it should be Megan.
Oh, Megan. Okay.
We are expecting Megan Life. I don't see her on the call.
Sorry, Deborah.
No.
Okay, do members want...
I am happy to field it, Chair.
Fine, if you could, I'd
members
be
have
grateful,
questions.
because it's quite a new item and it's an important way of distributing government monies that we're taking responsibility for in terms of London. So do you want to introduce it?
Well, I think as members know, I think this is probably the 3rd paper, very similar paper, that has come to you in recent months as a result of us being asked by government to take on various responsibilities related to fire safety, building safety. And actually, I can see Megan has joined now, but so we've now got quite a substantial building safety team within Housing and Land related to processing on behalf of government applications into cladding funds. This is a new ask from government, which the Mayor has accepted, and as a result we need to create some further posts fully funded by government. But Megan, would you like to say something specifically about the Waking Watch piece of this, which is the new piece?
Sure, thanks Mary, and apologies I was a little late, I was stuck in another meeting. So yeah, as Mary has set out, this is very much a kind of new responsibility that the GLA has taken on, and a different programme to the ones that we've been delivering on cladding remediation so far. And there certainly isn't capacity within the existing building safety team to run a new programme. The Waking Watch Relief Fund will be a time-limited programme, so I think it will be considerably shorter than the cladding remediation funds have proved to be. So we're looking at a 9-month programme initially, although we've agreed with MHCLG that if it takes longer to deliver than that, we'll revisit the resourcing question such that, you know, there will never be any costs to the GLA from running this programme. So, yeah, we've put forward 5 posts to run the programme, and they kind of work off the model that we've got elsewhere in terms of grading and job description. So there's a senior programme manager role who will lead the programme in my team, kind of engaging with MHCLG and boroughs and London Fire Brigades to get the programme underway. And then 3 grade 9 senior programme officers who are effectively case officers. They'll have a portfolio of buildings under them, and they're kind of running those applications and getting them approved and then into contract and managing the drawdown of grants on those buildings. And then a grade 7 programme officer who will be providing kind of programme support to the team on kind of reporting and processes and all of the related activity on that programme. So I think that's all I wanted to say.
No, thank you for that. Look, I think this will be welcomed by a number of people across London who are trapped in some very difficult and worrying situations. So we've been asked to respond to the Chief Officer's consultation on the expansion and the associated changes within the GLA Building Safety Scheme. Assembly Member Caroline Pidgeon.
Thank you very much, Chair. I fully support, obviously, the extension of the team because, as the Chair's already said, so many Londoners are trapped in properties and need to have interim fire safety measures. What I'd like to know is why it has taken so long for this to come to committee, because this fund was launched on the 22nd of December by government. It should have been at our January committee meeting. The rest of the country has the Waking Watch Fund open to them. In London, it isn't. So why didn't it come earlier? And how long is it going to take to get these employees in place so we can get this fund up and running as soon as possible to help Londoners, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that question. We were not, so it's absolutely right that the fund was announced in late December. The GLA was not approached to deliver the programme until early January. So we kind of hadn't been given any advance notice that this was coming, which would have enabled us to prepare. I think it's worth highlighting how different London's delivery of the programme is compared to the other areas of the country that have taken this on and as you rightly say, are already open for applications. So of the 30 million national pot, London has over 16 million of that money. So well over half the pot is coming to London. Whereas the variety of other areas that are administering this funding, so Liverpool City Council, Leeds, Greater Manchester Combined Authority, the vast majority of them have below £1 million worth of funding and a much smaller number of buildings to be administering this funding for. So Liverpool can expect probably 5 approved applications, whereas in London we can expect 160 approved applications. And I think that difference in scale means that the GLA needs to approach this very differently to how our partners have done in other areas of the country. It needs to be much more formalised. We need to use our grant and project management system, and that takes setting up. We need a much bigger team to run it. We need kind of formal approvals in place beforehand. So I absolutely take the point that we are opening later than other areas of the country, but I think there is a kind of justification for why that is the case, and we will be opening for applications on the 18th of March. So that is the intended launch date in London.
And just to clarify, in terms of the formal approval, is that we will be administering this grant to the criteria that government sets out, and in essence, it will require some government approval as we work along any grant that we think is worthy of support. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. So the GLA, in line with what we do on the cladding remediation funds, the GLA will not be making any substantive decisions with regards to application approvals or grant approvals. We'll be making recommendations, and then those will go to MHCLG for them to make decisions on who is getting funding on this programme.
Okay, Assembly Member Boff, I think I've seen your hand. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Will the fund be open to the GLA family itself? And I'm thinking specifically of Barking Riverside, where we had the fire, where from personal experience, I know that there were no communal fire alarms in the building while it was burning. So I'm wondering whether or not the GLA itself and its family will be making applications to this fund.
Thank you for that question. So the GLA's delivery of this fund is open to all private building owners in London. So so the first thing to say is any social sector or public sector buildings that want to apply to this programme those applications would be administered by MHCLG directly. So we won't be doing that administration. We're just working on private building owners. But it's possible that might cover some buildings on GLA-owned land. And yes, it's possible that there might be applications from within the GLA family and on the cladding remediation funds where, that there might be some kind of private buildings where the GLA is the freeholder, but there are private building owners that might want to apply to the Building Safety Fund or the Private Sector ACM programme. We have previously considered, kind of conflict of interest measures there on how we would administer that and have gone around that. So, yes. Does that answer?
I thank you for that. I thank you for that very full answer. I think it's an outrage that through no fault of their own, leaseholders have had to fund the Waking Watch just to keep them safe for ever since Grenfell. And we've got to see a resolution to this crisis. Thank you.
Okay, so we wish you well in terms of this scheme. Thank you for the way that you've answered our questions. I don't think there's any further response on this item. I'm now moving on to item 11, State of London debate. Emma Strain is with us, I believe. Emma, I don't think we need an introduction, but I'm looking to my members at the moment. So I think I'm going to go straight on to the committee is asked to note the proposals for the State of London debate as a digital hybrid event from City Hall in June 2021 contained in this report, also noting that the exact date is yet to be determined, and B, if there are members who wish to provide any views or ideas or suggestions on further ways to improve the State of London debate as a consultative event, then please either use this period that we've got now at the committee or relay that privately to your good self. Okay, so members, do you wish to say anything at this moment about this? A number of us have been involved in fairly informal briefings along the way. Emma, what I might do is ask whether the chair of the Assembly wants to involve other members to come back direct with you. Any comments around on it? Not to hold up this decision. I think we will take this decision so you enables you to plan and work it through. But if there are other members who've got ideas, it's not just the Oversight Committee, it's not just the political group leaders, then we might wish to forward them to you as well for consideration or future consideration. Is that agreed, colleagues? Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 12. Date of the next meeting of the London Assembly annual meeting is due to take place on the 14th of May 2021. We'll decide which committees to establish for the 2021/22 Assembly year and a timetable of meetings for those committees. Item 13, any other business that I consider urgent. I've got a proposal which I think is now published on the GLA website. Members have certainly had sight of the item, a new 13A, shared service proposals by the Greater London Authority for the management of the GLA's forthcoming duty to provide support to victims of domestic abuse and their children in safe accommodations. It's pages 1 to 6 on the supplementary agenda pack. I've got Deborah Levinson, Head of the Housing Programme and Services, online to introduce this report. Can I ask you to introduce it?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. So the bill is currently, domestic abuse bill is currently going through Parliament, and part 4 of that bill gives a new duty to Tier 1 authorities, which is the GLA in London, to ensure support to victims of domestic abuse and their children who are living in safe accommodation. And basically the bill includes producing a needs assessment, producing a strategy, and making commissioning and decommissioning decisions, and administering funding that will be provided from MHCLG to provide those services, either directly commissioning those services or providing funding to local authorities to commission those services. It also contains a duty to coordinate a partnership board, a multi-agency partnership board. So it's really good news. And this year, nationally, there's around 125 million attached to for 21-22 for delivering the duty, and London's been allocated 20.6 million. We've been preparing for the new duty since last year. MHCLG gave £50,000 to each Tier 1 authority, an equal amount to every Tier 1 authority. So we've got the same as Rutland, or much less complex and large authorities. So we have been preparing for this new duty and considering how best to implement it. And in the course of doing that work, it's kind of become apparent that a lot of the expertise around this sits with MOPAC. That includes their VORG strategy. They run grant funding programs for victims of domestic abuse. During COVID, they've provided accommodation and support to victims of domestic abuse and VORG. More widely, they coordinate the VORG board and VORG coordinators. And they also have an insights team that would be well set up to do or commission or oversee a needs assessment. So the proposal is that we enter into a shared services arrangement with MOPAC for them to do much of the work on delivering the duty. Within the GLA, we would also have resource to link up this revenue funding with our capital funding for delivering new safe accommodation. We'd also interface with the rough sleeping team, because there are obviously overlaps there, and the commissioning they do of services, and we'd be overseeing the work that MOPAC do. Key decisions would stay with the Mayor, so the Mayor would approve the strategy and needs assessment and commissioning decisions and recommendations, and then the money would follow for after those decisions have been made. The bill is unlikely to pass by the 1st of April, which is when MHCLG want the duty to come to the GLA. So there will be an interim period where it's governed by an MOU rather than the law. I think that kind of covers everything at a very high level, but any questions?
Thank you. I've got Assembly Member Caroline Pidgeon and Assembly Member Andrew Boff, who's going to come and ask some questions. So, Assembly Member Pidgeon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deborah, for that detailed introduction. Are you confident that if the bill is enacted in April or just after, that MOPAC and the GLA will be in a position to undertake these new functions immediately without significant interruption to those survivors in safe accommodation? And how are you planning to ensure there's minimal disruption for survivors? And secondly, it says in the report that it's going to be for MOPAC to decide how best to manage and organise its work in support of the GLA's proposed new duty. So what engagement has MOPAC been having with refugees and other accommodation and obviously the wider domestic abuse service providers about the new responsibilities, and how are you ensuring the key stakeholders feed into how MOPAC organises this? And also it's our duty, so our input into that as well. Thank you.
Do you wish to respond to that, Deborah, before I take Assembly Member Boff? So do you want to respond?
Sure. So in terms of minimum disruption, obviously the MHCLG are grant funding some services this year, and we've been really concerned about there being a cliff edge and no certainty for those services that they can continue. We've agreed with MHCLG that I think the 21 boroughs who are being funded through their grant funding this year will automatically have continuation funding. So that will be one of the first things that we do when the duty comes over to us. And that's been communicated to all of those local authorities. So there should be minimal disruption. But obviously we won't have the money in our coffers until the 1st of April. But the providers and the local authorities have had certainty that it's going to happen. In terms of being ready to go, we employed a consultant to help us with all the preparation work, and she's been engaging directly with the local authorities and providers, and we've been involved to some extent. And also MOPAC have their regular kind of forums like the ward coordinators where they're meeting boroughs and providers on a pretty constant basis. So we have been engaging. In terms of having kind of feet on the ground to do the work, it is a challenge, and it's a shame it's been left so late. The announcement on the funding was only made in February, and we're really going as absolutely fast as we can on this. But I think the most important thing initially is to make sure there's that continuation funding and to get the needs assessment commissioned. It's unlikely we'll be able to do that in-house given the short term, we haven't had that much notice.
Great, thank you very much.
Assembly Member Boff.
Thank you. Can I in advance say that some of my questions may be a bit low level, and I understand that this is a high level measure. But my first question is about accountabilities. It appears to me from that top level, the accountabilities for domestic abuse services or strategy is moving from one member of the GLA family to another. Are we going to similarly see a difference of governance arrangements in terms of how we hold the GLA family to account on domestic abuse services? Are there proposals in the pipeline to perhaps move that responsibility of accountability from MOPAC to the GLA?
I think specifically on this domestic abuse duty, it will still sit with the mayor, and all of the decision making will still come through the mayor. So there's really no change, and there's no change to.
I understand in terms of. I do apologise, but this is sort of a local thing, really. As an assembly member, I'm wanting really to understand how. Even though the mayor ultimately takes the same decisions, we have to hold those decisions to account. And currently we do that via MOPAC. If the shift has gone to the mayor, then MOPAC asking the questions on domestic abuse sort of misses out one of the agencies. I know this is a very tortuous argument, but it's a report that we've had not a lot of time to consider. So I apologise in advance for all these questions if they're at the wrong level.
Well, I think they're quite an important question you raised. I think what we need to deal with there is on the issues of accountability. I think, Deborah, you need to consider when you're, and this wouldn't normally happen, you'd normally report to the housing scrutiny team around your work. I think you need to now start putting in play on this particular piece of work that you will keep the Police and Crime Committee scrutiny team around that, because it's quite important. The issue of this accommodation with the service and how that service is provided is pretty special and not just bricks and mortar, if I can put it that way. So I think we need to pick up that point. It's a point well made by Assembly Member Boff. Do you wish to continue?
I wouldn't mind, and as again, apologies if these are at the wrong level, and if you want to tell me, I'll write to you. That's fine. But with the new domestic abuse local multi-agency partnership boards that's been outlined in the bill, what will the new arrangements be to ensure that in that system there is an objective to reduce risk and reoffending?
It may not be...
Do you want me to launch all my questions?
Well, can I just say, on that particular one, Andrew, I don't want to speak for Deborah, but that might be one that I think we need to refer to MOPAC, because my understanding is MOPAC will hold the policy brief, the housing services will hold the delivery brief for the accommodation and interaction with various partners who bid for money or bid for or allocation of funds. So I think if you get all your get all your questions out, and then
I'll get all the questions out,
and then what we will do is work out.
Right to you, no.
But I think we need some answers for it. And I think you're certainly raising some points that we need some clarity on, and we may ask Mary to go away and coordinate that rather than Deborah to do that with the various partners, as in MOPAC is a partner, but with the mayoral office, and try and work some way through this labyrinth. But go ahead with the rest of your questions and see what we can do.
On the housing front, obviously people who are victims of domestic abuse and may be in a safe house provided by housing. Will they receive free school meals during the duration of their stay in that safe house, while the victim is given support to get her back on their feet? The next question is on substance.
Sorry, Andrew, we seem to have some interference on the line. Someone's dragging something. Is that? Do we know if someone can mute themselves if they're not muted? Sorry, and please continue. It seems to have gone away now.
Apologies. So that question was about free school meals.
Yep.
Many victims of substance abuse often resort to coping mechanisms such as alcohol and drugs. Can we ensure support is provided to address those issues and recognise and pinpoint the cause and prevent these cases from escalating? And my last question is one of the issues that it's probably not reasonable for male domestic abuse victims to be in the same accommodation as female victims. So they may very well need specialist provision. Is there a recognition that they may need specialist provision for male victims of domestic violence? Those are my questions, and you can answer them now or write to me on those.
Deborah, would you like to pick up on any of those? And we're the ones that we can't deal with today, we'll ask Mary to pick up and provide answers to the committee and share those with Police and Crime Committee members as well. Okay, Deborah, go ahead.
I mean, I think a lot of this will come out of the needs assessment, and certainly one of the aims of getting this new duty is to address gaps in provision. So where there are gaps in provision, for example, for male victims of domestic abuse, that is certainly something that would be addressed. It would come out of the needs assessment. And similarly, services for substance misuse, the free school meals issue we can take away. But again, that would be something that would come out of how we specify what kind of services are needed and what will be provided. So I think that's probably, without getting into the detail of what actually is going to be funded in the future, I don't want to preempt that, but certainly accommodation for male victims is something that's been highlighted, and substance misuse.
Look,
Thank you
Andrew?
for those replies. It's just to say, again, I apologise for bringing it perhaps at the wrong time, but because of the governance issues, and I don't sit on MOPAC, because of the governance issues, it's, these questions are going to come from Assembly members. And it's where we ask those questions. I think that needs to be resolved as a matter of some urgency.
I think they probably will be at police and crime. But equally, can I just say, I don't think you need to apologise for the questions you're raising. As we said, this is going to be a very important aspect in our strategy of combating this violence, of domestic abuse, and so I think it's the right questions. What I think I would ask is Mary to pick that up, because I think there are some issues. We don't want things to fall between the stools, and we don't want things to be overcomplicated, and members should be able to access it, or at least understand which is when and where debates on this are, so they can join it. Because as Assembly Member Boff has said, he's not a member of Police and Crime, but clearly through his questions there's an interest in the subject. So can we try and solve some of those answers with a response back from the executive back to us, an officer executive, around how do we think we're going to get through these issues. And for the most parts, many members would support this proposal, but we just want to see some detail about it so we understand in the future where questions need to be raised on which aspects that we're concerned with. Mary, do you wish to respond at all?
Well, only to say, of course, I'll organise that, Chair. I think also, and when we have a very good example of it here, which we need to sort through now, because of all the points that Assembly Member Boff raises. But, of course, we've come to this view, looking across the GLA group and thinking about how can we best deliver this duty most effectively while removing any sort of unnecessary duplication and the rest of it. And there may be other examples in the future. So thinking about the governance of some of this now is absolutely right. And I think that's well raised by Assembly Member Boff this morning, and we need to look at it, and we need to look at it in short order on this particular item. But I think it might help us in the future too.
Okay. So thank you for that, both for the members' interventions and for the way that you've both answered our questions. Deborah, I just want to raise a separate issue. It was your team that was working with the partners on the homeless project during COVID-19? I think it was, wasn't it? In that sense, the coordination around...
The rough sleeping stuff.
Yeah, the rough sleeping.
Yes.
Well, can I just say a big thank you for that project. I think all the members from all the different political parties think it was an excellent piece of work. And I know it's not just you on your own, but it's with working with other partners out there in the third sector and councils. But you did a great job in difficult circumstances. So we want to say a big thank you to you while we got you on, because we don't normally have you on this committee in that sense, so we want you to know that. So thank you for that. Colleagues, I've got to just say the formal words. Someone's indicating on this item, Councillor, not Councillor Prince, Assembly Member Prince.
Not anymore, no.
Yeah.
Can I just add to your comments to Deborah? I've been working with Deborah at different sites across London around homelessness, and they've been really helpful. And we are making progress in spite of some hurdles. And I just want to say to you, Deborah, I will be speaking to you in the next couple of days about some progress somewhere.
Well done. Okay, so I've just got to get the committee back into the formal bit, because you know me, if I don't read my script, I know it's got me into trouble earlier on in this meeting, I'll be in bigger trouble. So just to go back over, so I've agreed to accept an urgent item of business at this meeting in accordance with section 100 brackets B brackets 4 of the Local Government Act of 1972 as amended, as detailed in the supplementary agenda circulated to members. Item 13A concerns the shared services proposals of the Greater London Authority for the management of the GLA forthcoming duty to provide support to the victims of domestic abuse and their children in safe accommodation. I think that will satisfy the clerk to this committee. We're now back in order. Can I thank the officers for the way that you've not just answered this item, but all the items on today, and thanks to the members' participation. I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Well done.